It's raw footage.
Is it? And this is
Instagram.
Instagram?
Live.
Yo, Instagram.
Ethan Pierce. All right.
So, all right. Well, when I was looking up information to learn a little bit more about how COPPA, which is actually fairly old, is why there's a lot of discussion about it right now, what we're seeing with YouTube and content creators, but also how this is going to potentially play into international companies. And then we're going to come back and talk about the CCPA as well and how that might affect people, companies
Sure.
that are not based in California. I thought that would just be fun to have a chat about both of those things. So to start off with, let's talk about COPPA. Maybe you could also explain just a little bit about what you do as a lawyer in the privacy space. Why is this something that interests you? Why are we talking about COPPA?
Sure. Well, first off, I'm glad we're doing this. It is always a pleasure to be with you, Ethan.
Right.
I think just to start off, we're in a digital age. I'm 30 years old, and growing up with social media, growing up with MySpace and Facebook and Twitter, the level of expectations for what we do online on our own pages, on websites, it's endless in terms of the realm. And I think where this COPPA law comes in and what I do in my own practice is helping to minimize the chances and likelihood of bad behavior online, poor digital hygiene, as colleagues of mine have pointed out. And we see this all the time, Ethan. We see it on Twitter with trolling. We see it on Instagram with body shaming. And on Facebook where people or individuals express their personal views and get bullied for it in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of space for people to openly communicate ideas. And I don't like it. I think there's a better way to do it. I think there should be some sort of framework in mind for these platforms that allow for people to express themselves freely, but also safely and securely.
And so, specifically to COPPA and protecting children online, I don't think anybody that is currently upset or excited in the wrong way about, especially around YouTube and what's going on. I don't think anybody in these situations is saying that children shouldn't be protected online, that we shouldn't be collecting private information for retargeting or
Right.
any kind of marketing that uses that personally identifiable information. So I don't think people are going to say that that's a bad thing. I think the issue is how do we enact proper controls
Sure.
so that this gets done right. And up until recently, this hadn't really been. I mean, COPPA is how old are we looking at here for COPPA?
It's back from I think the 90s, early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
So, up until recently, there had not been very many large judgments. And in February of 2019, ByteDance, the company behind TikTok, paid $5.7 million for violations. And that already seemed like a very, very, very big deal.
At the time, it was, I think, one of the largest fines for a tech giant.
And September 4th, $170 million slapped down on YouTube for COPPA violations.
Big time.
Basically because they were tracking the viewing history of minors and providing targeted advertising using that data. So the idea is that moving forward, YouTube has put into place a tool where now content creators have to declare either their entire channel or video by video that videos are suitable for minors or not, that they are created for, that the content is susceptible to be interesting and
Right.
watched by minors, and in this case, kids being defined as under 13 years old. So that in and of itself seems kind of harmless, the idea that you're identifying that your content is not there. What seems to be causing people problems is that YouTube has put into place a machine learning system to go back through. So basically, if you haven't done this, YouTube can identify which videos are or are not targeted to kids or for kids.
Yep.
And if you have gone through and actually said that all your videos are not for kids, they're actually still potentially saying, oh, actually, we think this video is for kids because it is animated,
Yep.
because it is about gaming, or something that for some reason, it's about comic books, that the subject matter seems that it's targeted to kids, or that in and of itself, is particularly for animation, is being targeted. And what YouTube creators are saying is the problem with that is I've identified this video as not being for kids. and then if YouTube flips it and says it is, then this is potentially $42,000 fine per video.
Per violation, per video, every time.
So any thoughts about how content creators can protect themselves in an environment where, so first scenario, they've identified their videos as not for kids and kids watch them anyways.
Right.
Where are we at?
Well, there's a lot of gray in that. And to your hypothetical, but a very realistic hypothetical, is, look, at the end of the day, you have to know what you're putting up. That is the way you and I are talking right now. The animation that these content creators are putting up, you have to flag your video correctly. I think the issue comes to be where you have YouTube, which is, understandably, they're not the ones putting this law into effect. Okay, they are following their guidelines, their obligations from the FTC as a result of their recent fine. Okay, so if you're saying under your hypothetical that these are content creators that are putting up what you said, adult-like content,
maybe
or?
think of like South Park. It's a
Okay.
cartoon, but it's
Sure.
not for kids. It has adult topics. It has potentially has language that's not for
Sure.
kids. So maybe you're doing that, and you say this video is not for kids. Kids are going to watch it anyways.
Correct.
And now kids are liking this. They're leaving comments. They're subscribing to your channel. All of these things are adding data into a system that will now track them, provide them with related videos,
Right.
and with advertising that is not just contextual to the content of the video, but is targeted based on all the videos that they've watched and their interactions with the
Right.
platform. So in that instance, children under 13 are being targeted, and yet,
Are they?
so that's
And
where this is at.
and that's the question. Is here's the, again, not legal advice, guys,
Yeah.
but arguably,
I'm not a lawyer. He is, but this is not legal advice.
hashtag not legal advice. In that setting, yes. If the creator is doing everything in their power, and I mean labeling their video, making sure that even in the description, not for children, not suitable for kids, their advertisements are all geared towards the adult grouping, and I mean 18 years and older, there's only so much a creator can do. Do they need to go above and beyond what they would usually do to make that disclaimer? I would say yes. But on the flip side, I think the responsibility is also on the parents of these children. Okay, there are ways that you just have to monitor your kids, guys. You really do, and I think that's what it comes down to is, at the end of the day, YouTube's AI or artificial intelligence software, as you mentioned to me earlier, it's not human. Okay, it can't detect emotions. It can't determine, yes, this is a cartoon, but there's adult language. We're not there yet. I don't know if we will be, maybe, but we're definitely not there yet.
So you actually touched on what seems like an obvious point. Definitely a point to when, as somebody who lives outside of the U.S., personal responsibility as a question and how this seems a little bit like helicopter parenting in the sense of, shouldn't parents just be managing to a certain extent what their children are consuming? So shouldn't that already be one thing? Like, for example, there is YouTube Kids.
Right.
So why are under 13-year-olds on YouTube.com? So maybe that's already a question of, do we need this? Shouldn't parents just be managing that? The second layer of that then is, as a platform, could you not simply, or maybe from the legal perspective, whenever you sign up for an account and you say, I am 13 years or older, should that not be all it takes for a platform like YouTube to be able to say, if an 8-year-old's watching videos on our website, they're not supposed to be, because we've said that to use this website, but maybe that's only for account holders. So maybe if you're not signed in and you're watching the videos, and then maybe that's a problem. So does YouTube need to go to a system where you have to be signed in order to watch content? And in creating that account, you have to agree that you are above 13 years old, which would just solve this for everybody instantly. Right. Why did they not go that route, I guess is...
And that's a good question. So let's go back to your first point.
Okay.
Helicopter parents. Yes, you would think that these parents are monitoring what their children are doing. Unfortunately, we're in an age now where children under 13, hell, 7 years old, 8 years old, are walking around with smartphones and iPads. I don't know what they do on there. I don't know what use they have on there. I'll tell you, I had to beg my parents when I was in 8th grade to give me a cell phone, or 6th or 7th grade, because I told them, well, what if the bus breaks down? I wanted it for games, But today, times have changed. Technology has changed. It is finding its way into the hands of people that are much, much younger. And at the end of the day, it is the parent's responsibility, because it's not the kid that's going to Best Buy and saying, or AT&T, hey, I'd like a cell phone. They are with their guardian. They're with their parents. So, yes, I think the parents 100% have a responsibility to monitor. Now, can they monitor 24/7 and know what they're doing? Of course not. But with technology, there's always new ways around security mechanisms or firewalls or parental controls, I think is a better word. Is there a VPN or a proxy? And for those who don't know what a proxy is, it is a way to convince the system that you are in another location, so the parental controls or whatever filters no longer apply to that particular computer's IP address, so it thinks you're elsewhere, someone else. It is very easy today for a child to go on Google or Yahoo and find a proxy that allows them to then go onto YouTube and choose that age 13. And I think, tying into your second point, that's what YouTube and a lot of these sites have done forever is, hey, you're signing up with us, make sure you fill out the information, your email, your name. By the way, are you 13 years or older? Yes. Okay. You're in.
Right.
That's been the problem. And the question is that enough? Is that enough on YouTube's part, or these content platforms? Is that enough to say, hey, we're doing our job to monitor? I would say no. I think, and this might be a little more advanced, but taking that I am 13 years old and saying, what if every time we sign on, we being a creator or a child, it forces you to enter a code? Like, think of two-factor authentication, where it forces you to enter a different code every time, but it's sent to a device that has been registered and approved by an account holder.
Okay.
So I think applying this, the kid can have a YouTube account, no problem. And I'm not talking YouTube Kids, I'm talking YouTube. But if the parent is the one that sets it up, it's attached to their phone, their email. So every time the child wants to search something, again, could be annoying, but they're forced to enter a new code or a verification code that is sent to mom and dad's phone.
But in any case, in that idea, maybe some of the solutions which should be in place but don't seem to be, are going to be in place.
Correct.
Are because maybe parents should be more engaged and responsible about what kids are consuming online. That doesn't seem like that's going to be the route that's taken.
No, not at
in
all.
This. And even we talk about this mandatory age verification, which I think there's several ways that could make sense, but there was actually an Internet Safety Technical Task Force in 2012 that they studied the whole mandatory age verification idea, and they said that it didn't actually help in a lot of cases, but more importantly, in their legal opinion, that's actually in and of itself a violation of privacy. Forcing somebody to prove their age and before consuming content.
You are seeing a clash, and it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. You are seeing a clash of law and technology trying to play catch up with one another. And every time you do one thing, it's going to turn that circle again. So the question is, how do we harmonize? Is it going to clash at times? Absolutely. We see it every day. But how do we make it to where, what if we have these animated videos? A creator is uploading a video, he or she or they are labeling, this is not suitable for kids. Their ads are designated that they are not for kids, but it's an animated video. What if, yes, that algorithm's kicking in, and that's kind of the unfortunate part here of YouTube, and maybe that's something YouTube needs to get together clearly, but factors. What we are going to see moving forward, and I think, in my opinion, I don't know what you think, this is the very beginning to a very long, drawn-out process where we are going to have to unfortunately sit back and wait for the first couple legal cases to come forward, because I promise you there will be a ton, whether it's a class action or individual suits where somebody's lost their channel, they're now losing money or profits, their reputation now has been impaired for whatever reason based off that takedown of the channel. And we're going to see and watch how the courts are forced to address this and consider, well, yes, it was an animated video, but it was something like South Park, but they labeled it properly. Why was it taken down? So now we start to create factors, and it's going to take multiple cases for some sort of standard to be somewhat utilized. Maybe not accepted in whole, but bits and pieces being applied.
So now, if I'm a content creator and I signal that my videos are not for children, then I'm not actually the one putting in place the targeting. I'm not the one putting it that's leaving the cookies, that's tracking people, that's showing them targeted advertising, even if I'm interacting with the content. So in the comments. So another curious thing for me here is with the Communications Decency Act with Section 230 that for the long time has been what has protected websites with user-submitted content. That the website, the platform, wasn't legally responsible if people were saying racist things or anything that was illegal in the sense of, maybe there was threats, maybe there was defamation, whatever that was, that would fall back onto the content creator and not onto the platform itself. But it seems in this case that that because it's the technology of the platform, they're the ones getting in trouble for violating COPPA. So I wonder why that becomes the problem of the content creator. If I'm posting videos on YouTube like this one, I can't control what YouTube does with your behaviors, your comments, your likes, which you should do. All of the, whether you're following particular channels, all the videos that you watch and the metadata that we can pull out from that and extract information. I have no, not only do I not have any control over that, I'm not the one benefiting from that directly.
Right.
In the sense of if the channel's non-monetized, all of that is only on YouTube side. And if it is monetized, YouTube is only sharing revenue with me, not giving me all of that revenue. So I wonder, in this context of the Communications Decency Act, which technically protects platforms, in this case kind of throws it back on them, because in this instance we're talking about the technology of tracking personally identifiable information. So I guess that kind of clears that. But I'm on a reverse kind of Communications Decency Act issue. Why is the content creator responsible for what the platform is doing with the data that it's getting?
Sure.
Why does the FTC all of a sudden say, and does that not necessarily go against the spirit of the Communications Decency Act, or kind of in an inverse way? Like, it just seems weird to me. On one hand, we're saying platforms aren't responsible, content creators are, but in this case we're saying on a technology level, it's the content creator's responsibility, not the platform.
So this is the evolution and complexity, ever-growing complexity of technology. And I'm going to throw a little bit of Inception at you here. It's a layer within a layer. So at its core, you have YouTube. It is a publishing platform. Yes, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says, look, you got to do whatever you can in your own right to control the type of content. However, can you be responsible for every single thing out there? Absolutely not. But if you start bringing content creators on the platform, this age of creating, curating content and having your own house, your own storage, your own channel. Yes, it's housed on YouTube. Yes, it's housed on TikTok or Twitch, whatever platform you're using. But you're creating your own publishing platform, so to speak, your own little home of where it's just your content and your neighbors are fellow content creators and fellow channels. So if I were to respond to that, I would say, yes, the CDA does apply, but it depends. And that's the lawyer answers. I think it depends. In this case, if you're looking at YouTube's point of view, yeah, look, accountability. Accountability for us as the platform, but also we need to make sure that we're not offering up a platform that is being abused, and rightfully so abused, publicly abused. And that's where your hate speech, your terrorist groups or extremist groups are coming into play. And then also having content creators that may be affiliated with certain brands or organizations that aren't I guess the word is safe, Branding is everything. You know that. And I think from a content creator standpoint, you have to be careful. You have to be so careful because every word that comes out of your mouth, our mouths, Okay, every brand. What about the media partners that you have? What about the sponsored, the people that are backing you or helping your channel grow? If you're affiliated with a children's brand, maybe you didn't disclose that, but they're contributing. That's a factor. So I don't think there's a clear answer to your hypothetical, and I don't think there ever will be, because I don't see that. You have two content creators. YouTube is a content creator. It produces its own content, but it also operates as a housing platform. So does a content creator. Why? They have their content, but they also have their channel that is within YouTube. So it's kind of, you got both
Right.
sides.
So, so the big impact that this is going to have, and we'll finish with YouTube and move on to another perspective on this, but the big problem that this is presenting to YouTube creators is that you have, for example, the 8-year-old kid who's, I think, one of the top YouTubers after PewDiePie, and all he does is toy reviews. And he makes, I think last year he made like $30 million or something crazy like that.
What kind of toy reviews? What kind of toys?
But see, here's the reason this is upsetting all these communities is if you yourself identify the videos as being for kids, or if the algorithm does, then no more comments, no more channel notifications where you click on the little bell to get notified when there's a new video, no more related videos, no targeted advertising. You can still have contextual advertising based on what is in the video itself, but nothing based on you as a person.
Sure.
And most importantly, you won't show up in Google search results. So whenever you search for the name of that video, it will not show up, or that subject matter, so you will not get the inbound clicks. And so that is going to destroy a huge amount of the revenue of most of the family-friendly content on YouTube, which I think will have far-reaching effects on access to that. There's a lot of conspiracy theory and stuff being thrown around about are any of the large family-friendly companies, without naming them, behind some of the lobbying that has caused this to happen, so that it has to go to the people making the paid content. But in any case, this is going to really wipe that out. So I guess at this point, people just have to be aware that they need to mark their videos correctly. They don't really have a choice if they're marking them for kids about what that's going to do to their revenue. If they're marking them for adults and YouTube steps in and says they're for kids, then that creates a gray space. And if they're marking them for adults and that's where it's left, then there is still a slight gray space there in terms of if they're producing content that is very interesting to kids, even though the content creators' intentions were to create that for non-children.
Sure.
So that's kind of our run there on the YouTube piece. But let's flip that, unless you have something else to add to YouTube.
I'll just, I'll end on one note. The issue with at least our generation is nostalgia. What if you have somebody that is a major creator, whether it's Pokemon, whether it's Digimon, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons, Fortnite, whatever it is. For a lot of us that grew up with Pokemon, it's pure nostalgia, okay? There are still people my age and friends that are immersed in this area, but adults like it too.
Right.
But there's still children that have the new generations of Pokemon, whether it's Pokemon Shield and Sword. So my kind of final point is, remember, YouTube isn't the major player here. The FTC is the one that is kind of holding the strings. And to address a lot of the points that we just talked about is check out the FTC's website. The FTC last week released, I think, new guidelines, about 12 factors to consider as a channel creator on whether or not your channel complies. So it's more than just the content itself. It's how are you talking? How are you dressed? What hand gestures are you using? If you are doing animation, what is the character design like? What are their voices like? So, there are so many factors. At the end of the day, the FTC is welcoming people to actually write them and submit a request, which they do take very seriously on, hey, does my channel comply? So I guess, again, not legal advice, but if there is a concern, my advice would be, what is the harm in just reaching out to the FTC through their online form and saying, hey, here's my channel. I've been doing this for 10 years. Yes, I make money, but here's how my content kind of progresses. What would you suggest? Because I want to cooperate. I want to respect, the process. The answer here, guys, isn't, bad-mouthing YouTube, bad-mouthing the FTC. It's not going to get you anywhere. So I think we're all in this together. It is a very big learning process. But
there were several comments that were like, well, we're just going to leave YouTube and go somewhere else. And
where are
that's
you gonna
missing
go?
the point because...
Yeah, everyone's going to be subject to it. And that's why a lot of people, not to get into blockchain and digital money, but blockchain technology, you mentioned PewDiePie, a lot of these creators are, I don't want to say necessarily leaving these outlets, but going to other outlets on the blockchain or a different ledger that is a little bit more encrypted, a little bit more secure. Topic for another time, but it's forcing people to think and go above and beyond the minimum of what they have been doing for a very long time.
Now, so that gives us a good idea around the content creation and YouTube problem. If we take a step back from that and just talk about if I have a company that is not U.S. based, my audience is, or my customer base is global. So we're not necessarily talking about content creation, just simply I have a platform for news, I have, maybe it's a SaaS company, or maybe it is content creation, but I'm not an American company. What should I be thinking about in terms of compliance with COPPA?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Know your audience, domestic or abroad. The fear with COPPA, the underlying fear, is exposing a child or a group of children to content that could harm them, whether they realize it or not, emotionally, physically, or place them in physical danger. So the ability, or inability rather, for a child to appreciate or comprehend the type of content you're presenting, that would then lead to them and their curiosity saying, what does that mean? This person just said this, I'm going to go and search. And now they've entered into a world that is a lot darker, could be a lot darker, could be a bit more above what they already know. And to be blunt here, the issue of child pornography, the issue of human sex trafficking, especially for minors. That's the fear, and it's a very realistic fear that we've seen in the news. It's so much more than, Dateline NBC, How to Catch a Predator, is you don't need borders anymore. It's online, whether it's WhatsApp, Snapchat, any of these apps, Telegram, you name it. It is always going to be a platform where there is going to be an adult that somehow sneaks into a children's only app, or a child that sneaks into an adult-only app and exposes themselves to an environment that they don't understand. That's the fear with COPPA. It really is just protecting the child from a life of trauma, from a life of harm, both emotionally and physically.
Okay. Well, so I guess that gives us a good idea around the content creation, as well as just on the international side, you're still subject to compliance, and so you need to make your best effort to understand who the users are that are using your service. If you're not targeting children, to make sure children are staying out.
Yeah,
and if you are creating content or have a service that is for children outside of the U.S., that you still have to adhere to COPPA compliance, not only potentially for the legal reasons of doing so because of American children participating, but also just because that might be a good standard to align yourself to.
Sure. I mean, internationally, are you bound by COPPA? No, because it's a U.S. law. However, when you're abroad, if you are in communication with anybody in the U.S., there are international principles like the effects principle. You are causing, or you could have the ability to cause a harm to a citizen of the U.S., and the U.S. has a duty to protect its own. Okay? So, yes, you may be abroad in Europe, Italy, Paris, France, okay? It doesn't matter where, but if you are targeting or directly communicating with somebody in the U.S. and through your behavior, through your actions, intend to cause harm, that's as if you are directly causing harm to the United States. Does it make you bound in that sense? There's an argument because you are now targeting somebody of the U.S., absolutely.
So thank you for this tour through COPPA, specifically around content creation, but also some points to take into consideration if you are an international company that is creating content or not creating content dedicated to or focused on potentially a child audience. In any case, I appreciate your insights. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll be leaving some information down below in the links both for contact, but also for FTC resources and others. I think we're going to have a lot more coming on this subject project moving forward with U2's implementation and other things. And so space to be continued. I have a feeling we'll be coming back to this in January or February and doing another video on how the Armageddon has hit YouTube and others as this comes into play. In any case, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethan. Pleasure.
Thanks.